See, we have a couple people web conferenced in. Thank you very much. If you're not a pastor or someone in ministry, your occupation does not glorify God. I don't know if you've ever heard that said before, but you might have felt that way. Let me just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Sam Adams. I am a business manager working for a company for almost 10 years. And I've often asked myself the question, does God want me in ministry, or can I glorify Him right where I'm at in a secular job? Well, we're going to demonstrate that God does have a calling for places outside of ministry, and He calls all of us to that. And we're going to do that in 4 ways. First, I want to show that God is calling us to be a light in a dark place. I want to show that God calls us to work and to work hard. I want to show that God causes us to use our money in ways that glorify Him for heavenly purposes, as well as I want to show that God calls us to train up others, discipleship. So first, I mentioned that God calls us to be lights in a dark place. I just want to describe a particular occupation that some of you all may aspire to as college students seeking a business degree. Business operations managers, according to Glassdoor.com, earn a median income of $104,000 per year. That's a pretty sizable chunk, and that position is a challenging position because it requires strong interpersonal skills, as such a manager works closely with frontline employees. It's fast-paced, and it's very demanding. So some of you may aspire to that. Well, how can I glorify God with such a position? Well, Matthew 5:16 actually helps us to start to see that, as it says, "So let your light shine before men, that they will see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." And well, what does that mean? What does that have to do with our work? Well, John Piper actually describes that a little better, a little bit farther, when he says, our work is not the beautiful woman, but it is the necklace. And what that means is our work is not the gospel, but it adorns the gospel. That's a very important thing, because it means when my good works are shining as a light before men, that means it points them to Christ. It points them to salvation. Likewise, if my works don't line up right, if I'm not doing the right thing, it does not adorn the gospel. It makes it look unattractive. An example of this that I've seen is a recent survey of youth in America showed that 89% of them believe it is more important to be a good person than a rich person. It's more important to be a good person than a rich person. That means it's better to say and do the right thing than it is to have money. Well, 59% of those same people admitted to cheating on a test. That means that their actions and what they said didn't line up. That doesn't adorn the gospel very well. So a business operations manager may actually have a great calling. The second thing I mentioned is that God calls us to work. He calls us to work hard. How does He do this? Well, Colossians 3:23 is one good place to look, as it says that whatever we do, work at it with all of our heart, as if serving the Lord and not men. So that means that whatever we do, anything we do, that is doing it for God. That sounds like ministry to me. Take it a little further. Proverbs 12:11 says that God has created us that we have to work in order to survive. We have no choice. God's made it that way. Wayne Grudem, in his book Business for the Glory of God, takes that a little further when he says, "It may be that God created us with such needs because He knew that in the process of productive work we would have many opportunities to glorify Him." So God has made us to work hard, and He's not done so just so that we would survive, although He said that's an essential part. It's also because in that process we glorify Him. He gives us opportunities. Thirdly, I mentioned that God commands makers of money to use their money in such a way that it serves a heavenly purpose. I threw out a business operations manager who makes a sizable salary. That's a good amount of money, and that type of person has an opportunity to do something with that money. Luke 16:9 tells a fascinating story about an unfaithful manager. He didn't do a very good job, and he was going to get fired. But what he did before he was fired is he went out to his master's debtors and he started forgiving those debts. Half off, 2/3 off. So what he was thinking was once he gets fired, these people will welcome him into their home and they'll take care of him. And Jesus commends this guy. He didn't do it because he was a faithful manager. He didn't commend that. He commended him because he was shrewd with money. So Jesus takes that and he calls us to take that money that we earn and use it for a heavenly purpose. He says, be that shrewd with money. It's kind of like a good investment to store up treasures in heaven. And Randy Alcorn, in his book, The Treasure Principle, talks about this a little further as well, when he says, our heart will always follow our treasure. So that means, as a business operations manager, if I'm taking my $104,000 per year and spending it on treasures in this earth stuff, that's where my heart is. But if I take it and I spend it on heavenly purposes, that's where my heart is as well. So that's something to think about. And fourthly, God calls a business operations manager to not only do these things, but to model them for others and teach others and train them to follow. It says this in several places in God's Word. It's great in Matthew 28:18-20. He calls us to make disciples of all nations. 2 Timothy 2:2. Paul is speaking to Timothy and he says, these things I've taught you, take them and teach other faithful men who will take them and teach others. So we see it's not just about what I do, but I'm also training others to follow. We are doing that. And that's a great way where our work can glorify God. So we see that. We see the demonstration of whatever we do is a calling, no matter if it's secular vocation or if it's vocational ministry. To sum this up in one verse, 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. Thank you.